Poof! The conversation you're having has just gone up in flames. What happened? Well, over the next few weeks, we are going to be talking about ways our communication can make a conversation go up in flames. You might remember from science class the fire triangle, the things needed to keep things ablaze. Well, there's some things that we can talk about that happen in our communication that can cause our conversations to just go up in flames. So instead of fuel, you got the history. Instead of heat, that keeps the things going, you got the delivery, the way you say the messages, and oxygen, that all important thing that just can really feed a fire. Well, in conversation, a lot of times our ego can take over. And I'm going to be breaking those down over the next 3 weeks. And this week, we are talking about the fuel that keeps conversation conflicts going. And that fuel that keeps those conversation conflicts going is the history between you and the other person. History is the baggage that feeds the flames of conversations going up in flame. It is the stuff that has happened in the past, what has been said, what has been done, what has not been said. You know what I'm talking about. It is that history. That is the baggage that feeds the flame of our conversations going up in flames. And I'm sorry to tell you that unless you have a DeLorean made by Doc Brown, you can't change history. So, are we doomed to keep rehashing past pains, hurts, and arguments? Well, that's a choice. That's a choice if we let our past pains and arguments keep these conversation fires going. There are tools, though, that we can use to remove the fuel of history because, you might remember from science class, if you remove any one of those things of fuel, heat, or oxygen from a fire, guess what? The fire goes out. So if we can remove one of these legs, whether it's history, delivery, ego, preferably do all three, then we can put out the flames that can sometimes happen when we are having a conversation and it devolves into conflict. So, as we're looking to remove the flames from these conversations we have, and specifically this week, we're talking about the history that we have. We need to ask ourselves, like, am I okay with paying the rent for this thought to live in my head? You might say, like, what the heck are you talking about, John? Why are you talking about thoughts paying rent in my head? Well, it's because nothing lives in your head rent free. Meaning, I'm sure you've had things on your mind, and what happens? You can't just don't have the capability to let new things in. So you're essentially paying rent for all those thoughts in your head. So really ask yourself, like, am I okay with this history between this person and I taking up space in my head? Because that's space that I could be filling with other stuff that's speaking life into me, speaking life into other people. So ask yourself, am I okay with paying the rent for this thought to live in my head? Another thing that we need to ask ourselves is, what is my 0.1%? What is my 0.1%? And you might be wondering, what the heck are you talking about, John? And this has to do with what we contribute into the conflict. Because I am sorry to tell you, amigos and amigas, but you and I are never totally blameless. We are never totally blameless with whatever conflict is going on in our conversations. And before you object and say, but, remember, ask yourself, what's your 0.1%? And what I mean by that is you have contributed somewhere between 0.1% and 99.9% to this situation. Whatever you have conflict you have found yourself in, you are not blameless. Neither am I. We have contributed somewhere between 0.1% all the way up to 99.9%. Sometimes it really is mostly our fault, but guess what? The other person contributed a little bit. And they could be decisions that were made a long time ago and have arrived us there. So we need to really be aware of, hey, maybe I am not entirely right here. What's my 0.1% that I contributed to this conflict in this conversation? So when we begin to realize that we are not entirely blameless, guess what? That builds a little bit of empathy and maybe, just maybe, we'll be more apt to listen to the other person's point of view. So ask yourself, am I okay with this thought living in my head? Because it's you're paying rent on it. And also, what is my 0.1%? Another thing you can do to remove the history component of the conflict is, first of all, set yourself up for success. Actually talk about what happened. What do I mean by set yourself up for success? Well, discuss it when things are calm. Do not discuss it in the heat of the moment, right? Do not bring up the things they did that upset you in the heat of the moment, especially if they are things that you kind of alluded to were done with that. Don't bring it back up. If you're not done with it, if there's still things going on, discuss it when things are calm. And if you can really make peace with the fact that you are not entirely blameless, that will open your ears a little bit more. That will open your mind a little bit more. And hopefully, it closes your mouth for a moment to let the other person tell their point of view. So, as we wrap up here for this week's content about the history between us and the other person, how that can fuel conflict in our conversations, remember, ask yourself, am I okay with this, with paying rent on this thought in my head? Ask yourself, what's my 0.1%? Because I've contributed to the situation somewhere between 0.1% and 99.9%. And set yourself up for success to address these issues that have happened in the past, especially if we are not over them. And how do we set ourselves up for success to have those, those critical conversations? Well, we don't do it in the heat of the moment. And here's an extra bonus tip for you. Don't speak in absolutes. Avoid the I always, you never, this is just the way it is. It's always been like this. Avoid those absolutes because remember, it's somewhere between 0.1% and 99.9%. So, hope you enjoy this. Drop a comment in here, reply to me, let me know what are some ways that you have trouble letting go of that history, or maybe if you've successfully navigated that, let me know what's worked for you. Because next week we're going to be jumping into the spark of a lot of times when these conversations get set ablaze. And by spark, I mean the delivery, not what we say, but how we say it. All right, everybody, get out there and ask yourself, what's my 0.1%? And am I okay with this thought living rent free, living, paying rent on this thought in my head? Onward and upward, everybody. See ya.